My parents tried to make me pay double rent to support my unemployed brother and his influencer wife living for free. So I finally moved out and left them to deal with it. So, I'm a 28-year-old woman, and this whole drama started 3 days ago. Since then, I've been crashing on my friend's couch. But let me give you the lowdown because there's a lot leading up to why I'm so ticked off. I've been living in my parents' basement apartment for the last 4 years. It's not my dream, but it made sense money-wise after I finished college with my nursing degree and started working at a local hospital. My parents converted their basement into a pretty nice one-bedroom spot with its own entrance. They're charging me $800 a month, which is a steal compared to the $1,400 to $1,600 similar places are going for in our area. I thought they were being really nice by helping me save up for my future place. Now, here's where it gets sticky. My parents have this weird thing with my older brother Jake, who's 31. He's the favorite, and I'm not just saying that. Growing up, he could do no wrong, while I had to work twice as hard for half the praise. When Jake barely made it out of high school, they threw a party like he cured cancer. When I graduated from nursing school, they said, "Good job," but then immediately started talking about how Jake might go back to school someday. Jake's never stuck with a job for more than 8 months. He's always chasing some get-rich-quick scheme, but never actually follows through. He's done landscaping, tried selling insurance, did some construction, and now he's delivering for DoorDash and Uber. Meanwhile, I've been working full-time as a registered nurse, picking up extra shifts, and even got certified in pediatric care last year, which bumped up my pay. For the past 4 years, while paying rent and being part of the household, I've also been teased, and the one taking care of a lot of things for my parents. My dad's 63 with diabetes and high blood pressure, and my mom's 59 and dealing with worsening arthritis. I'm the one driving them to doctor appointments when their work schedules clash, picking up their prescriptions, helping them navigate insurance stuff, and I've likely saved them tons in medical bills by catching issues early. Last year, Mom had knee surgery, and I used all my vacation days to help her recover. I was basically her live-in nurse, helping with physical therapy, managing meds, cooking because she couldn't stand for long, and handling all the chores. Dad was grateful, but Jake barely visited, maybe 3 times in 6 weeks, and he only stayed for about 20 minutes each time. I'm also the go-to person for fixing things around the house since Dad's health makes it hard for him to do repairs. I've fixed plumbing, painted rooms, installed light fixtures, set up their new TV, and even recaulked their bathroom last month. I never asked for payment since they're my parents, and I figured the cheap rent balanced things out. Now, let's talk about Jake's wife, Brittany. They got hitched 2 years ago after dating for just 6 months, and I knew from the start she'd be trouble. Brittany's 26 and hasn't really had a solid job. She's done some babysitting, worked part-time at a boutique, and is all about her 200 Instagram followers, dreaming of becoming an influencer. She's super sweet to my parents, but it's all an act. She'll come to family dinners empty-handed, but then post pics of the food like she made it. She claims it's tough to find work in her field, but she doesn't actually have one, just vague ideas about social media or event planning. Jake and Brittany live in this tiny apartment across town that costs $1,100 a month, and they're always late on rent. My parents secretly bail them out, but I caught on when they suddenly tightened their budget, like wanting to go out but deciding to save money or delaying home repairs they'd normally handle right away. About 6 months ago, Jake and Brittany got booted from their apartment for missing rent, and I found out when Jake's stuff appeared in our garage. Mom casually mentioned they were staying in Jake's old room for now, but for now has turned into 6 months. They've made zero effort to move out, and Jake's still doing gig work off and on. Brittany started selling some health and wellness junk on social media, which is definitely a pyramid scheme, but she acts like it's a legit business. Things really started to boil over about 2 months ago when I noticed my parents acting weird around me. They'd go quiet when I walked into rooms and started asking questions about my work schedule and salary after my raise. I thought maybe they were just curious, but it felt off. Then 3 weeks ago, my mom asked if I'd thought about moving out. Not in a rude way, but like she was testing the waters. I told her I was happy with the setup and asked if something was wrong. She said everything was fine, but her question left me wondering. Fast forward to last Tuesday, and they called a family meeting after dinner. I figured it was about Dad's upcoming birthday, so I thought we'd be chatting about some health stuff since Dad had a doctor's appointment that week. But nope. Mom launched into talking about family finances and out of nowhere said they're jacking up my rent to $1,400 a month starting next month. I was floored. Totally speechless for a minute. That's almost twice what I've been paying, and it's more than the going rate for basement apartments around here. I asked them why such a massive jump, and Dad said housing costs are up everywhere, and they need to be fair to themselves as landlords. What really ticked me off was I asked if this was because Jake and Brittany are living there. Mom got all defensive, saying Jake's stay is temporary and separate from my rent. She claimed they'd been mulling over it for months and thought it wasn't right for me to live so cheaply while making good money as a nurse. I reminded them I contribute more than just rent. I'm basically their part-time caregiver and handyman, and that should count for something. Dad said he was grateful but added that family helps family, and that shouldn't mess with our rental deal. I was getting pretty heated and said if family helps family, what about all the cash they've funneled to Jake and Brittany over the past 2 years? Mom turned white and said that's none of my business, but I argued it becomes my business when they suddenly want to double my rent. That's when the argument really kicked off. I told them I knew they've been covering Jake and Brittany's expenses and that their need for more money from me was to keep supporting Jake and Brittany, who seemed to think adulting is optional. Mom called me cruel and claimed Jake's just having a tough time. Dad said I'm selfish and they have the right to charge market rates. I fired back that market rates come with market rules, like proper lease agreements, 30 days notice for rent hikes, and not expecting tenants to provide free medical care and maintenance. I insisted that if they want to treat this like business, we've got to do it right, that they can't just pick and choose when I'm family or a tenant when it suits them. Mom started crying, saying I was unfair and that they never asked for medical help. I volunteered. I explained I did it because I thought we were family, but apparently, the family card only gets played when it benefits Jake. Dad was angry, saying I'm out of line, Jake needs support, and I should be grateful for the sweet deal so far instead of whining about sharing the load now. I told them my fair share should include all the free labor I've done over 4 years, and if we calculated it, they'd owe me. The argument dragged on, full of drama, with Mom crying and Dad accusing me of being entitled because grown-ups pay market rent. But the real kicker was that neither of them admitted it was about Jake and Brittany. They kept up this charade like it was just a coincidence. Finally, I said, fine. If you want to charge me $2,400, I'm out. I'll find a place where I get what I pay for and I'm not subsidizing my brother's lifestyle. Mom said I was dramatic, Dad claimed I was being stubborn, but I was over it. That night, I started scouring apartment listings. Next day, I called in sick, spent the day apartment hunting, and found a nice one-bedroom spot 15 minutes from the hospital for $100 to $350, a bargain compared to what my parents wanted. It came with perks like a dishwasher and in-unit laundry, plus the peace of not hearing Jake and Brittany's midnight chats. I applied, got approved thanks to my solid credit and job, signed the lease, and set a move-in date without telling my parents. I quietly started packing, keeping my routine. Normal. Wednesday morning, I woke to Jake and Brittany debating money upstairs. Brittany wanted new clothes for some event. Jake wasn't sure they could afford it, but thought maybe their parents could help out again. That's when it hit me. This rent increase wasn't random. My folks wanted extra cash to keep bailing out the golden child and his wife. I was fuming. I went upstairs, told my parents I'd found my own place and would move out soon. Mom was shocked, asking if we couldn't sort it out. I said there was nothing to sort. They wanted business, so I'm taking mine elsewhere. Dad said I was being silly, claiming I wouldn't find a better deal. I told him I'd already found several, plus I wouldn't be doing unpaid chores. Jake wandered in and, hearing the news, had the nerve to say maybe it was for the best since I'd been, according to him, hostile lately. Unbelievable. So here's the deal. My parents were totally putting my brother Jake and his needs over just being fair. I straight up told Jake I wasn't being mean, just honest, like he and his wife Brittany were basically living off our parents, and now I was the one they were squeezing for money to keep up with Jake and Brittany's lifestyle. Obviously, Jake got all hurt and defensive, saying it wasn't true and that they were just having a tough time but would bounce back soon. I asked him how soon, because this temporary rough patch had been dragging on for, forever. Jake then started talking about how tough the economy is these days, and I was like, dude, I get it. I managed to get my life together with the same economy and the same parents. Right then, Brittany waltzed into the kitchen asking why we were yelling. When we filled her in, she acted all fake concerned, saying it might be better for everyone if I had my own space because I seemed stressed. I told her the only thing stressing me out was seeing these two grown adults mooch off my aging parents without adding a single thing to the household. Brittany played the victim card, saying they were trying their best and going through a hard time. I shot back that everyone has hard times, but most people don't crash at their in-laws' place for half a year without trying to fix things. Jake tried to say I didn't know what I was talking about, claiming they were job hunting and saving money. I asked him what jobs he'd applied for recently, and he had nothing. I asked Brittany about her business, and she said she was still building her client base. I said it didn't sound like excuses were getting them anywhere. My parents were trying to calm us down, but I'd had it. I reminded them I've spent years helping and supporting them, and now I had to double my rent so they could keep enabling Jake and Brittany. Mom said it wasn't fair and that they appreciated me, but Jake needed help, and family helps family, right? I was like, apparently, family only helps family when your name is Jake. When I needed a fair rent, suddenly it was just business. Dad got upset, saying I was twisting their words and they'd done me a favor with a low rent until now. I was done. I told them to find someone else to pay full rent without the extra help I provided and see how that worked. Then I called my friend, asked if I could crash on her couch for a bit, and she was all for it. I started packing my stuff that night. By Thursday morning, I was loading my car with essentials and headed to my friend's place. I left a note for my parents saying I was staying with a friend and I'd come back with a moving truck for the rest of my things. Mom called me a bunch of times on Thursday. I finally picked up, and she was crying, asking me to talk things out. I told her it was too late for talking. They made their decision, and I made mine. She accused me of being stubborn, saying I was splitting the family over money. I told her it wasn't about money for me, it was that they chose Jake's needs over mine. She insisted Jake was just trying to get stable and they were helping him, but I asked why his stability mattered more than our relationship, and she had no answer. Dad texted me later, asking if I'd reconsider and maybe we could find a compromise. I texted back saying it wasn't just about money anymore. It's about how they weren't honest and prioritized Jake right from the get-go. He said I was being dramatic and they'd always treated me fairly. I was so angry I didn't reply because I knew I'd say something I'd regret. As I thought about it more, I realized they'd never really treated me fairly. I was just too busy being the good daughter. It's Friday now, and I'm headed to get the rest of my stuff with a moving truck. My friend's helping me out again. I'm not thrilled about seeing my parents, but I need to get my furniture and everything else. Jake texted me, saying we should talk and he doesn't want all this to tear the family apart, but I don't even know what to say to him. He's never faced the result of his choices before, so he doesn't get that actions have consequences. I'm torn between thinking I'm doing the right thing and worrying if I'm being too harsh. Yeah, my parents are older and they'll struggle without my help, but they chose to put Jake's comfort above treating me fairly. It really bothers me they weren't upfront about everything. If they'd said, hey, Jake and Brittany need help, so we'll need more from you too, at least it would have been honest. Instead, they tried to pretend it was just normal rent stuff, as if I wouldn't catch on, son. So here's the deal. I'm done believing in coincidences. I'm moving ahead with my plan. Today, I'm grabbing my stuff and starting fresh in a place of my own. I'm not even sure if I'll stay in touch with my parents. That's totally up to whether they're ready to admit they messed up and why it was wrong. I've had enough of being the one who's always responsible and gets taken for granted while Jake gets all the support and endless excuses. Some people might say I should forgive my parents because they're family, but respect matters too. They totally failed to respect me by not being upfront about what was going on or considering how I felt when they made their choice. They expected me to just go along and be the good daughter who never stirs the pot. Well, plot twist. I'm stirring the pot now. I'm putting my needs and financial future first, instead of shrinking myself to keep Jake comfy. The moving truck's due in a few hours, and then I'm officially out of here, ready to start fresh. I'm kind of nervous about living on my own for the first time since college, but honestly, I can't wait to ditch Jake and Brittany's daily drama and not watch my parents bending over backwards for them while treating me like hired help. Can't wait to see how they react when I really move out. So, am I the jerk for bailing and cutting ties with my parents after they jacked up my rent to fund my golden child bro there and his wife? Or am I just finally standing up for myself like I should have ages ago? Update. The moving truck rolled up right on time at 1 p.m. and my buddy met me at my folks' place. With my key in hand, we just let ourselves in through the basement and started loading stuff up. Guess the truck made some noise, cause my parents showed up about 10 minutes in. Mom immediately went all teary-eyed asking why I was doing this so fast and if we couldn't work something out. Dad's reaction? More anger than sadness, questioning why I had to make such a big deal out of everything and why I couldn't just be reasonable about the rent. I told them I was being perfectly reasonable by removing myself from their unfair setup. Mom insisted they loved me and wanted me to be happy, but come on, if that was true, why nearly double my rent without warning to cover Jake's expenses? Just then, Jake and Brittany came down, and Jake tried to play mediator, acting all neutral. He suggested maybe we could work things out with a compromise. I told him the time for compromise had passed when they decided to treat me like their personal ATM. I was done negotiating with people who'd been misleading me for months. Jake claimed it was all just a misunderstanding about money. That's when I lost it, saying there was no misunderstanding. I knew what was up. My parents needed extra cash to keep supporting Jake and Brittany's lifestyle, so they turned to me because they knew I was the reliable one who wouldn't cause problems. Well, not anymore. Brittany chimed in, saying it wasn't fair to blame her and Jake for my issues with our parents, that this seemed more like a family communication thing. I couldn't believe her nerve, acting innocent while they were living rent-free in my parents' house, and I got charged double. I laid it out for Brittany. She and Jake were the problem because my parents had been footing their bills for years, and now they wanted me to keep it going. She claimed they pitched in around the house and provided companionship, which was such a joke I laughed. I said if her companionship was so valuable, maybe she should pay rent with her Instagram followers. Jake got all defensive, saying I was being mean to Brittany, who was just trying to get her business off the ground. I pointed out it had been 2 years, maybe time to get a regular job like most adults. As everyone kept shouting, my friend who'd been quietly packing my books suggested focusing on moving since we had limited time with the truck. I was grateful for her stepping in before I said something I'd regret. But Jake kept pushing, saying maybe it was best if I moved out since my attitude was affecting the household. I was floored. Here's Jake, living rent-free for 6 months, telling me my attitude was the problem. Unreal. So I ended up moving out because my folks wanted me to cough up more cash to fund Jake's freeloading ways. I told Jake that my attitude wasn't the problem. The real issue was that he, a full-grown adult, thought it was cool for his folks to support him and his wife forever without him pitching in at all. Jake thought it was unfair and argued that he was working and still trying to get on his feet. But I told him that doing a few DoorDash deliveries here and there isn't the same as having a stable job or owning up to his responsibilities. That ticked him off, and he claimed I didn't get how the gig economy was, legit work, and accused me of being elitist. I said I wasn't being elitist, I was just being realistic about the fact that his income wasn't enough to support him and Brittany, which is why they were still crashing with our parents and why the folks needed more dough from me. I told them I'd found a new place for cheaper than what they wanted to charge, and it even had better perks, plus 0 family drama. Mom tried to say that being close to family mattered more than money. I countered that, yeah, it's great when family means mutual support and respect, but not when it means being taken for granted while my needs are ignored over Jake's whims. My friend gave me the, let's wrap this up look, and I tried to close the conversation by saying I'd made up my mind and was moving on with my life. They were free to keep supporting Jake and Brittany, but with their cash, not mine. Mom asked if this meant I'd stop talking to them, and I said it depended on if they'd own up to what they did wrong. Dad insisted they hadn't done anything wrong, just made a reasonable request about rent. I argued that lying about the rent hike reasons and putting Jake's needs above fairness was just manipulative. Dad called me dramatic and said I'd regret burning bridges over money. I told him it wasn't about money. It was about setting boundaries for respect. If that felt like burning bridges, then maybe they should think about why they treated me poorly. We finished loading the truck mostly in silence, with them trying to reopen the conversation, but I shut it down because I was just done arguing. Once we were almost done, Mom pulled me aside to ask if I'd avoid family dinners and holidays. I told her I didn't know, and it'd depend on if they were ready for honest chats and changes. She claimed not to get what changes I wanted since they'd always been fair. I said that if she thought they'd been fair, resolving this wasn't likely. Mom got teary again, didn't want to lose me over this, and stressed that family was more important than money. I agreed, family matters. More than money, which is why I was so hurt. She insisted they didn't choose that path, but I told her that's exactly what they chose when they decided to lie and manipulate instead of having a straight-up talk about the situation. Dad came over and complained we were taking too long with the truck and asked if I'd share my new address. I said I'd think about it. He thought it was ridiculous that I wouldn't give my address since I'm their daughter. But I replied that respect earns rights, and I wasn't ready to share personal info with folks who'd lied for months. Dad said I was being childish and vengeful for punishing them for helping Jake. I said it wasn't about punishment. I was looking out for myself from people willing to manipulate me for their benefit. If they wanted a future relationship with me, they'd need to acknowledge their mistakes and set things right. We loaded the last boxes, and I returned the basement key, Mom still asking me to reconsider and maybe work out a compromise. I told her it wasn't about the money anymore. We had an awkward hug goodbye, and I told them I loved them but couldn't deal with such an unfair and dishonest dynamic anymore. Mom said she loved me and hoped I'd change my mind, while Dad felt I'd regret my decision. My friend and I returned the moving truck, and I collapsed on her couch processing everything. I flip-flopped between feeling like I did the right thing and maybe being too harsh. I'm dreading work tomorrow because I'll be exhausted, but I also feel relieved, like I finally stood up for myself. My new apartment is ready, and I'm moving in after work tomorrow. Living alone will be strange but good for me. No more worrying about anyone else's drama or needs. I still don't know if I'm the jerk here or finally doing what I should have years ago, but I know I can't go back to just being grateful for scraps while Jake gets everything. If you haven't yet, please subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more crazy real-life stories happening around you.